Welcome to the December 2022 first virtual reading. It's hard to believe that 2022 is over almost, and I haven't even gotten used to it being 2022. Now I have to get used to 2023. Gosh, it's going too fast for me, but that happens when you get older. Well, it's great to see all of you. And today we're going to do something a little different. Usually we start with our features, but today we're ending with our features since one of them got a little mixed up with the time, and we're giving him an opportunity to finish doing what he's doing and be the last one to read. So our first open mic person is not here yet.
Robbie,
yes.
can I raise my hand? You were going to give me an opportunity to plug the calendar, and I will need to share screen to do that.
I forgot. So I will try your new method. There you go.
And okay, let me get back to the right page. Here we are. This year, for the first time, because I'm tired of paying for everything for Verse Virtual, I created a calendar out of all of the cover art that I've used for the past year. So these are all cover photos from issues of Verse Virtual for 2022. If you are inclined to order a calendar, the total cost is $20. It includes shipping. And if you use the click on the Verse Virtual website, it will open an email and give you information for paying by Venmo or PayPal. I will also take checks if you want to do that. And you can find that calendar by clicking on the home page and looking at special calendar offer. That's where it will take you. So there's my plug. It will add a little bit of money into the coffers for paying for hosting and other things for Verse Virtual, and give you an absolutely lovely calendar for the year. It's a full-sized wall calendar. That's it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
And you do deserve some help, financial help, for all of the care that you take. So I will see if I can manage it. All right, I guess now we can proceed. Our first open mic person is not here, so we'll move to the second. I'm sorry, Joan, to
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Okay, Joan Leota is going to begin. Again, for those of you who don't know, it's 2 poems or 5 minutes, whichever comes first. And a couple of you who aren't on the list currently may get the opportunity to read, but I have to begin with Verse Virtual members before I proceed to others. So go ahead, Joan.
Well, I'm going to read from my new book, which I will put the details of in the chat after I read. But I've picked one that's a little bit different from a lot of what I write. It's and then the second one was in Verse Virtual, so some of you will recognize it. But this one is about my great-grandmother. On a trip to Italy, I learned when visiting the homeland of my father, which is in the Abruzzo region, I learned that the Abruzzese were the Sabines. So if you remember the rape of the Sabine women, famous, classical thing, the Sabine women were dragged off to Rome and became mothers of many Romans, whether they wanted to or not. So I'm positing that one escaped, and that's the title of the poem. One escaped. Likely my great-great and more grandmother was peacefully watching her grazing sheep with her sisters, cousins, and friends on a quiet mountain afternoon when it became hell as Roman legionnaires leapt out from behind rocks, slung the women over their shoulders, carried them down the steep hills into rough camps, those sons of Romulus tying them to posts until all could go to Rome. Moaning and crying, her sisters, cousins, friends called out for their fathers, brothers, uncles to come and rescue them. Not my grandmother. She challenged her sisters to leave with her. We can secure our own escape. When at last the fire's embers burned small and legionnaires sprawled on the ground in stupor from drink and brawls, Grandma wiggled out of the fetters on her slender wrist and disappeared into the forest, up onto the mountain. Her bare feet knew the rocky pathways. Her sheep bleated, ran with her. She climbed until at last she came to a small Sabine village and eventually married a man of her choice. Those others who stayed made sons for Rome. Eons later, Grandma's son descended the mountain, crossed the sea, married a Calabrian woman, fathered me. So that's in celebration of my ancestors in the Abruzzo. And by the way, my father's mother had 13 children. She was a tough lady. You can see where I was inspired. Okay, and she lived to be 84. This one is about Pittsburgh, which, as you know, from anyone who is from Pittsburgh, you can't take Pittsburgh out of the person no matter how long they've lived outside of Pittsburgh. My daughter is convinced that Pittsburgh is a cult, not a city, even though she's been there many times with me. And this is about a department store to which most Pittsburghers will say, "Oh, Kaufman's, I loved it." And everyone did. And people still meet under the clock, even though it's no longer a department store, of course. And this is about the escalator that was in Kaufman's, titled then Kaufman's Escalator. I loved taking the escalator in Kaufman's department store. Wide gaps and grooved steps meant Mom always called out warnings to hold on and not let anything on my person, shoelaces, long dress hems, dangle where those moving steps fold into one another, lest I be drawn in and die a horrible death. Escalators were just one risky part of an entire world waiting to swallow me up at the smallest misstep. At age 12, I was allowed to go downtown alone to Kaufman's. I'd love to take the escalator to watch the merchandise counters disappear from that odd triangular perspective as I held tightly to the handrail, exulting in the frisson of fear present in all risky undertakings. Once, just for fun, I rode up all 13 floors, from first floor perfumes to last floor furniture, gawking at ladies' and men's apparel, toys, books, housewares, and more in between. But when I felt tired or unsure of my shoelaces, or my hands were full of packages and I could not grab the rail, I took the elevator. Even now, I try living that same balance, for what worth is daily life without some risk? And that's the bonus. Thank you for letting me read, Robbie.
No problem. Okay. Is there anyone else from the group first who would like to read? And then if not, I will, so Mary.
It's
Anyone
me.
else?
I was
Dick?
after,
You
I
did?
came after Joan.
Yeah, you do, but I'm putting these folks on the end of the list.
Okay.
So Dick, do you want to read?
I thought I was, yes, I do. I certainly do. I thought I had signed up.
I don't see you on. I don't see you on as of this morning, Dick.
Okay.
Not that we wouldn't love to hear from you, but it looks like I'm looking at the list as it exists right now. Mark, Joan, Gary, me, Rosemary, Robert Dean, Cindy Wren.
Yeah, I asked to be put forward a bit because I have to leave early. So
I don't see Cindy.
She just signed up, like since we started.
I mean, she's not in, oh, there she is. She is waiting to get in. Okay, so we're full, it seems, and I'm sorry for anybody who didn't make it in. Sometimes we are able to let in people from outside the group, but today not.
And I'm happy to yield the floor to the gentlewoman from Peru.
Thank you so much. So should I read now or?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm reading from my very latest book, Saudade. Here it is. And the poems explain themselves. I don't think I have to add anything to them. High noon in Seville. Somewhere in the old town, I walk towards your flat. Occasionally, my leather sandals slip on the century-worn stones. Horses and their carriages are resting under the sycamores. At this time of day, even tourists idle over their lunches. Chords from a flamenco guitar bounce softly against the tenement walls. There is that warm horse scent of wood chips, dust, hay, and sweat. The coachmen snore softly, committed to their siestas. Your neighbor, the fat old woman, never looks up. Her door is always open. The air is cooler in the hallway. Temperatures in their 40s C are only the beginning. Summers are killers in Seville. The old woman smells of animal buried in hot earth. A smell so intimate, I blush. On this hot, lazy summer afternoon, only the flies buzz. The guitar stops and starts. A horse's hoof occasionally clanks metal against stone. I daren't ring your bell, but knock. Even the knocking jars. Your sleepy face in the doorframe, lips pursed. There is a waft of summer sex and perfume of an unknown brand. Your skin can't lie. And the second one is called Fading. You must remind me of the good times. Before we went to sleep and turned away, before you asked me not to leave you, before I had to get drunk on those nights I knew I couldn't say no. Remind me of the times you walked naked to the kitchen at 3 a.m. in that awful flat you shared, just to take all the pips out of watermelon slices and feed me cheese and juicy sweetness, singing Teddy Bear's Picnic. Of the day you came to meet me at the port, and how you rested on the embankment while I cleaned the spark plugs. Remind me of the scary film when you held my hand, or of the laughter when we married. You got a potted plant from the pet shop and cut off the flower so I would have a bouquet. Remind me, because how else can I tell the children that they were conceived in love?
Before you go, Rose, people are commenting on your poems, and you should put your information about your new books
I do that
into
now.
the chat.
I do
Yeah.
that now.
Yeah. I think they might want to know about it.
It's there.
So our
Like
next, it's okay, great, thank you. Our next reader is our fearless leader, James Lewis.
Okay, let me confirm that this will work. Good. That lets you see the picture by itself. Every December, starting last year and repeated this year, and every April, I post an opportunity for people to throw me a prompt, and I will do a poem a day for the prompts that are sent in. So for December, I do the 12 days of Christmas. and the poems don't have to have anything to do with Christmas. This is just like a Christmas gift. So I'm going to read one of those poems today called The Old Country. I've been there in dreams to the old country, more times than I can count. Been there in dreams to see how every region, every city has its own personality, foods, customs, costumes, laughter, and celebrations. Been there in dreams to see how love of family and friends triumphs with no one celebrating hate, no one, as if we'd finally learned that love is in who and what we are. Give me a good bratwurst, a polka, traditions, arts, people, sunset and sunrise, clouds, rain, each holds the key to peace. I went there in dreams and remembered on waking that the old country lives in me. Thank you. And that's all, just the one. You're still muted, Robbie.
That was terrific. Sorry. That never gets old, apparently. I keep making that mistake. Our next reader is Robert Dean.
Gee, well, it's my first time here. I know some of you. Gonna do a couple of ekphrastic pieces from a series that I'm currently working on. Speaking of Pittsburgh, a Pittsburgh poet named Jason Baldinger. I don't know how many of you know Jason, and let me get share screen going here. He also, besides being a wonderful poet, takes great black and white photographs. And so I've started writing a series to his photographs. These first two appeared in the Ekphrastic Review recently. Hopefully y'all can see the white photograph there on your screen. This one Jason just titles them by the place he took them. This one's Hinton, West Virginia. And the poem I wrote is called Heaven from Here. The train arrives, or not quite really, still belching, no squeal of iron on iron, no one there to hear it, platform empty, the sign of who we are backwards. Perhaps we have been or will be or are passed by. History on display at the Ritz, an audience of ghost chairs, stacking metal and vinyl banquet on mosaic depression tile, floral pattern long wilted like us. Are we in or out? We can't make up our minds. Maybe we'll turn left, maybe right. One arrow pointing us toward the train, the other the direction it was headed, or we remember it being headed, or would remember if we were still here, still performing, still listening for the whistle of time rolling in, the drum heartbeat of shako-plumed youth celebrating whatever it is we used to celebrate. Lamppost flags waving once again in the breeze that is surely locomoting in on the dark underbelly of the sky. One lone tourist trying to capture his ghost that he is and always will be. And Jason happened to capture a bit of himself in the lower right-hand corner of that one. And the other one, which is also in the Ekphrastic Review, is this photo, which is just simply titled Walkersville, West Virginia. And the poem that resulted from it is called The Hang-Up, as you might have guessed. They hear it in Ohio, Pennsylvania, the cotton fields of the Llano Estacado, the gator lands of South Florida, the bottom of Crater Lake. Tsunami warning, siren across the Pacific. 3 mountains in the Hindu Kush implode. Blood stains your connection to civilization. You didn't know Bakelite could cut so deep. It's 1983 and she's told you don't call her again. No matter if you're lost in the woods in Hicksville or whatever, falling off a cliff, sinking in quicksand, goodbye, good riddance, good God. Hasn't she had enough? Haven't you? And here you are, 4 decades, 3 divorces, 2 heart attacks, 6 grandkids later, a middle of nowhere return, sanity hanging by a thread. You wish you could pick it up, put it back together, punch the right numbers, say, I'm sorry, wondering, excuse me, isn't life funny how you found it again? How this thing is still here, your anger, your hang up, if only you'd known. Leaves rustle, wind blusters in the open window. You start the car, head for the interstate. That lunatic asylum you saw in Weston. Shuttered now. Tourists and ghost hunters only. Poems of the lost tattooed on therapy room walls. You happen to have a crayon on you. In the rear view, the phone rings. Thank you. Let me get on the shared screen here. Okay. Okay.
Those
thank
are
you.
terrific. Are you from Pittsburgh originally?
No, Jason is the guy who took the
Yeah,
photographs.
I just wondered how you came upon them.
Oh, we've come across paths in many online Zoom groups like this one. So also 365 days and 365 poems in 365 days. It's a good.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Anyway, we're intending a chapbook worth series of this eventually. And we got about 7 of them done so far. That's it.
That's impressive. Well, thank you so much. Our next reader is Cindy Rennie.
Hello. Okay, hi, everybody. I missed it. Is John not coming? John Brantingham?
You missed me saying that he got mixed up with the time and is
Okay.
teaching a class until 2:30 his time. And then he's going to bring all his students with him
All right.
if he can
Great.
figure out how to do it. I don't know why I'm not seeing people
I'm seeing you.
spotlighted. I'm not seeing them spotlighted.
I don't know. Usually when you speak, then it's, well, anyway, I'll read. I'm going to read.
Okay.
So this is based on a painting of Saint Sebastian by Jesse Mockran and some true life of a friend experience traces. Pick off what he wants in the sky bowl, Carl Sandburg. Arrows to his trunk, peels the dysfunction of naked hope. Smoke of red moon drifts in desire, pierced by the sun like a hunted stag. Blurs his last solar cycle, life entangles in cords of twine. Who grips the bow, draws the taut string, stabs the heart. She doesn't know where the grief resides in her body after his death. Rubs her skin, flakes leave traces of him. And my other poem is Sky River. Her body broken like the ceramic shards of a doll. Is there beauty in the sharp edges? She reaches for the sky, stars press close. Cloud people help her fly, pull, hold on. Crouches and covers her head among a meteor shower, unfolds and places a star in front of her face. She transfers her energy into the mask. Light flows. First horse Celeria comes near. They glide, follow a fluid ribbon in the sky. Water pours like ambient sounds, a ritual to glue her body back together. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. It's good to see you. Our next reader, who we also haven't seen for a while, is John Compton. John has lots of exciting news.
Well, thank you. And let me find my page. I'm reading from my new book, The Castration of the Minor God. And I was blessed with Sonia's wonderful blurb for it. I just wanted to mention that. Um, and so I'm just gonna read the one poem. And thank you for letting me read, Robbie. I appreciate it. This poem's titled Roland. If my father had not sewn his palms to my mother's womb, I would have never known his existence. His voice like vinyl, thick and scratched, barely audible through the skin. If he had known my ears worked, maybe his voice would have been louder and he wouldn't have been afraid to say, I love you. And that's that poem. Mhm. Thank you.
So you can read another if you want.
Okay. I read, I'm gonna give, sorry, I have to set my phone down. I have dogs and cats all around me. And so it's, I will read, oh, there's a poem in my head. Oh, this one. It's a sad poem. It's called How We Bury Fish. A motionless womb. You remember your fish. You were 8. It was floating belly up. You tapped on your stomach as a mother, a little girl trying to tap her fish from sleep. You gave birth to a stillborn. My father explained to me how we bury fish. I heard the toilet flush behind my sobbing. And that's that poem. And I just want to say too, I write a lot of mothery poems. I know I'm a dude, but I was raised by my mother and my grandmother, and I was very, raised by women. And so I try to write poems for my mother in the voice of my mother. And so she had 2 miscarriages. And so that poem is inspired by her. Just so it's not like, well, you're a guy.
Guys have mothers too.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, John.
you're
If you
welcome.
want, you could put your information about your books in the chat.
Alright,
Okay?
thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. Mary? Mary
Okay.
McCarthy?
Yeah,
There
I'm
you go.
here. I had to unmute. I still don't have a book to advertise, but this one, some of you might be familiar with it. It appeared in Third Wednesday a few months ago. Crow Song. It's too late to cooperate or pretend I agree with my own embarrassment. An old crow who still steals shiny things just because I like their broken shapes, the lines of fracture making sense of who they wanted, of what they wanted most, of how they failed, bright things broken like glass thrown against a wall, falling in shards of diamond, glittering beneath the soles of boots, too thick to notice how they shatter light, a million prisms making rainbows out of sacrifice. Call me thief. I only steal what you would throw away. Turn your back on, deaf to every raucous squawk that raises an objection, refuses to obey, chooses its own splendor, its black and rusty cape of feathers before all your gaudy promises, ready for anyone who keeps their head down, heart close, tongue reined in, behaving the way you think they should. And this is another one called My Dreams. My dreams dispute the usual with a magician's flair, houses that unfold level upon level, room after room that wasn't on the blueprint or here yesterday, each one more beautiful than anything I've ever seen, with windows that open on mountains and meadows, endless and changeable as memories of promises left neglected and unkept. In my dreams, there are gardens where no fruit is forbidden, enclosed by walls, yet inside endless, infinite, where everyone I ever loved lifts her hands in welcome, tending trees that hold flower and fruit together, undivided by the season's stringencies, where the laws of time and gravity are all upended. The moon falls out of heaven to burn the world with airless fires. My feet no longer stay meekly beneath me, but rise like joy, light and easy on the air. And I wonder how I could have forgotten such a simple skill as flight. My dreams allow no wariness or caution, where I dance in the arms of a bear, held close in his shaggy heat, the smell of his wildness in my hair, the taste of his unspoken words warm on my tongue. These rare redemptions release my grief, return me to innocence unstained, fresh as the infant's first sensation of a world so new. I have no expectations, no words, no formulas, nothing to come between myself and wonder until dream's brief forgiveness fades and once again I wake. Thank you.
I agree with Betsy. 2023 should be the year of Mary's book. We should talk about that. Okay, our next and last reader in the open mic is Dick Westheimer.
Well, that answers that private message question to you, if I got on the list. I have two poems. This first one, the epigraph and the title are the same. And the epigraph is attributed to our most recent NFT salesperson, Donald J. Trump. I have a big announcement to make. I am releasing a deck of virtually worthless cards of me doing what a poet does. Here's one of me lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, obsessing about an opening line. Here I am, wadding up a piece of paper, on it a seventh draft. Here I am standing over the stove, sauteing onions. Their smell stirs the hidden Proust in me. Oh, and this one, when I look like a nose-slapped dog, my fourth journal rejection, today. Tonight in bed, my wife asks me to read this poem, says I left some things out. Poppy me, singing the Tooth Fairy song to our grandson. Baker me, pulling a perfectly browned braided loaf from the oven. Superhero me, laying with her on a sunny afternoon, me being the largest part of her seeing stars. And the second one, we're all in a tizzy about a chat GPT, and this is a conversation. Well, here's the title. I chat with an AI about poetry. Well, here I am chatting about poetry with a machine, a bot taught to respond like a human. I ask it, what do you know about birds? Because aren't all poems like birds, or flying, or nests feathered with strings and willow twigs? Don't they require being free as a goose shitting from the sky without regard to what sits below, or like those gulls, which I mistook for doves of peace, that passed in front of the cameras when the Capitol was under siege? The AI responds in what I took to be metaphor, that some fledglings are pushed from their nests too soon, and others take flight right into the windows of nearby houses. And I asked AI what it thought about window glass and fledglings and other things avian, and it responded that it had no personal thoughts, that it is forbidden to have personal thoughts about birds or anything. But it does offer an opinion about climate change. So even the bot knows change is for real, which gives me confidence in its powers. So I ask it for a poem. Write to me of love, a sonnet, I ask, and in perfect iambs, it rhymes you with you, and true with two, and proclaims you are mine and I am yours, and you make me complete, and love is real, a thing that will continue to grow forever, which terrifies me, as if love is like the empty space in an expanding universe, or Amazon's annual retail sales, or the interior of a black hole, a lava flow from a perpetual volcano, the spreading blood stain from an inexhaustible wound, the hubris of AI, a tumor. Thank you all so much.
I sense a theme.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's always great to have you on the open. So that completes our open mic segment of the program, and we're going to move into our features now. This is the point at which we would take a break if we were live, but we're virtual, so we're not going to today. Our first feature, and I know we're all waiting impatiently for her, is Sonia Greenfield. They is the author of 2 forthcoming collections of poetry, All Possible Histories, published by Riot in Your Throat, December 2022. So it's fresh off the presses. Yeah, I've got mine downstairs. And Helen of Troy is High AF. Harbor Editions, January 2023. So she is another one coming out real soon. She's the author of Let Down from White Pine Press 2020, An American Parable, Autumn House 2018, and Boy with the Halo at the Farmers Market, Cod Hill Press 2015. She lives with her family in Minneapolis, where she teaches at Normandale College, edits the Rise Up Review, and advocates for both neurodiversity and the decentering of cis white hegemony. And she has a website, which I'll let her, or maybe I'll put it in the chat for her while she's reading. So go on.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's really nice to be here. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces. There's a lot of friends out there. They're all of it is friends. And so it makes me feel it warms the cockles of my heart. I like to think there's cockles in there. I don't know what they are, what they would look like in my heart, but they're warm right now, just so you know. Okay, so I feel, it's funny, but in a lot of ways, I feel like some of you have heard some of these poems. Like some of them I read all the time, but I'm going to purposely not read those because I don't want Robbie to be like, oh my God, she's reading that tentacle poem again. So I'm picking different ones this time. Okay, but anyway, so I'm going to read 2 from All Possible Histories. The first one is They Teased, if you love your dog so much, why don't you marry him? And the title runs into the rest of the poem. They teased, if you love your dog so much, why don't you marry him? And so I did, in a small ceremony under a gazebo by the water he ran into, new suit ruined, and onto our reception, heavy on meat, heavy on his extended relations with their poor decorum and crotch sniffing. So many things we bear for love. You could say we were in heat that night, the heat that night, hot with the breath of August. And after spins on the dance floor and so many bowls topped with champagne, we all flopped to the floor, panting with joy or an inability to sweat. That night, I dreamt a whelp, half his shepherd's shaggy coat of russet and black and half my human dignity. But being hybrid, the boy was loyal only to himself. So let's say we kept things chaste. Let's say there is such sweetness to wed for all the right reasons, like a partner beholden unto me, his brown eyes, if not undressing, always asking that we stroll the streets, and through his short years we did. How he pissed a perimeter of safety that we lived within, a ring of neighborhood trees marked as ours, how his muzzle grayed only 6 years in. And then I'll read, I hope this email finds you well. This one was written during a pandemic. Okay. I hope this email finds you well. Attempting to dodge it and any others, the email finds you anyway, trying to stifle your sobs with a quilt as your spouse loads the kids into the car for hockey practice. And you don't know if it was the note from an aunt that your cousin's baby was stillborn, or reports that novel strains of the virus may mean the new normal will be the normal for always, or whether any misfortune triggers a crying jag so profound and ugly you sense it's because you haven't processed losses large and small, and they've built up the way laundry does if you're not washing it on the daily. But what you do know is that the car is running and the kids will be late again, which means dirty looks from the coach just for you. And thank God you've given up on makeup or even caring if the shirt you're wearing is the same one from the past 5 days. So you snot into a tissue and grab a mask from the drawer now commissioned for masks, and use your uncombed hair to hide swollen eyes from your spouse who drums a staccato of impatience against the steering wheel. So those are two that I hope that you hadn't heard yet from All Possible Histories. And now this chapbook, Helen of Troy is High as Fuck, is coming out in like 2 weeks, and it's all poems from the perspective of women in the Odyssey. So each of the poems gives them an opportunity to speak. And I will read 2 from it. The first one I'll read is Circe in the Age of Instagram. Nothing is anachronism if you live forever, it says in my bio. I started with carefully composed shots of the island, sun filtered through olive grove and arbor, close-ups of hermit crabs hurrying their little conches across the sand. Every influencer knows what we go through to make labor look like love. 20 takes trying to get that thirst trap, gently slopping the hogs, hair curled by afternoon heat, gorgeous in torn coveralls with my bright red bucket. Post it. How else to turn vengeance to magic and magic to commerce? Sometimes we're even the beneficiaries of serendipity, sun somehow netted behind a new sail, arriving on shore, the shot perfectly composed as the next set of sailors straggle into foreground. I post it. The girl must make the best of what she possesses. I share daily stories of how they squirm and tumble over another, adorable montages of snouts snuffling the lens. I filter the ugly out of muddy trotters and mottled skin. I give them stupid names like Pegasus and Agamemnon. Then I satisfy every order: belly, shoulder, bacon, and loin.
And then I'll read the last one in the. A servant in the house of Odysseus confesses prior to her hanging. And it has an epigraph from the Emily Wilson translation of the Odyssey. He wound a piece of sailor's rope round the rotunda and round the mighty pillar, stretched up so high no foot could touch the ground. Book 22, the Odyssey. The conquering is like waves that break and break again against the shores of Ithaca until every ounce of humanity is washed away. First, it's the man, then it's the land, then all of the fallen women corralled and distributed among the favored houses at the whim of what power creates when it fluctuates between forces and their pitiful pissing contests. I am a cat on a string. I am a kite on a string. I am no thing but what the masters make of me, taken at 12 from Troy and taught to pleasure soldiers from the side, lucky enough to be Athena's pet project. But who protects me? To the gods, we are nothing but the sound of static in their ears, our cries heard like tinnitus only when their halls fall silent. You say I betrayed, but I laid with men set to unseat Odysseus from his throne. But that implies free will, of which I have had none. I am done and to be strung as an ornament in the winds that have always blown against me. All my protestations strangled to silence until I can cross that river and sit with my mother again, where I can braid her hair still caked with the gore of stuck suitors, and we can be liberated finally from the bodies that ferried us through this terrible ordeal. Okay, so I am going to read new. I'm going to read new. I think I'm doing okay time-wise.
I think this is the last
The
one.
last poem? Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
Good to know. Thank you. This is called Ode to the Man Who Kissed Me When I Was 13. At 13, I'd climb the rock wall and cross the grounds of Nardones to get to the little yellow deli. Same yellow as my house, which was haunted by the miasma that rises from a childhood about to fall apart. How the walls on Smith Street sweated their insects, how no monumental crack showed, just the feeling that the whole place could go like the house of Usher. Was it in the parlor next door when red roses tended by my grandfather's hands were tucked into his hands that set it all in motion? Whatever the prick of misfortune, it hung about like the stink of cigarette smoke in plaster walls. Meanwhile, 13 was still roller skating and longing for sparkly laces, still glittery kittens stuck to my trapper keeper, still a long tangle of hair I never took care of. I'd climb the rock wall as often as I could if I had the quarters to carry me to the deli for Starburst and a glimpse of the guy working the register. I wore a groove through the neat grass of Nardones just to get there. How I'd stammer. Everything was gilded at 13, like it was chromed and bronzed and golden, until it took a tarnish. That was the year my babysitter wrapped her car around a tree. My stepfather kicked my cat off the 2-story deck, and the school custodian showed me dirty magazines in his garage, as if death and sex were all part of the same lesson. Still, no wonder my obsession with unicorns, how exquisitely close I was to being one, wild-maned and magical, and a creature on the verge of being something more than merely a horse. I remember how I invited him to my birthday party and how he climbed over the wall and into my yard. But was he a man? I only know he had a thick crown of curls and was old enough to work a slicer. How must it have looked from his side of the counter? He must have wondered at least once what it would have been like to kiss the starburst from my mouth, to tongue away all the sugar because I was pining for something I had no guile to define. He only visited the party for a minute, and then he did it. He brushed his closed lips across mine and left. I never saw him again. 13 was the way I could hear my own heartbeat over the strains of Pat Benatar, lying awake with promises in the dark, wondering what next, now that love has fled the little yellow deli on Washington Street. Praise him for running from a desire too pure to be fulfilled. Desire musical as the tinkle of sleigh bells against a glass door. Desire waiting for her change, silhouetted against July's sun, beaming into the candy section. What man could fulfill only what 13 was asking for, but not a touch more? Thanks, folks. So nice to be here.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And our second reader today is Nicole Callihan with an I. Nicole's new book, This Strange Garment, will be published by Terrapin Books in 2023. Her other books include Superloop and the poetry chapbooks, The Deeply Flawed Human, Downtown, and Elsewhere, all in caps, with Zoe Ryder White, as well as the novels, the novella, The Couples. Her work is, well, I won't go into all the places, very impressive places where her poems have appeared. And I will put her website in the chat when she starts to read. So thank you so much. And please go ahead, Nicole.
Thank you, Robbie. Thanks so much. It's great to be here. Sonia, I loved hearing you read. I always feel like you're my friend, and I mean, you are sort of, but just, you know, it's amazing to hear you. And Dick, you look almost exactly like my high school physics teacher. So I have this like, and those were great. So it was great to hear all the open mics as well. So thank you, Robbie. My book, this is the cover, and it's a book. In September of the pandemic, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so this book is all about the year around my diagnosis and treatment, which was both, I mean, it was a long pandemic. I guess it's still a long pandemic. But I'll just read poems from it. So thank you for listening. A day at the beach. The nurse says I'll likely feel okay, a little tired, very warm, like you've spent the day at the beach, she says. But it's winter in New York. After treatment, I eat 2 street tacos on a cold, wet corner, walk to Chinatown, pay cash for burn cream. There's a nickel-sized blister on my clavicle. When we were young, my brother liked me to peel his sunburned back, long sheets of dead skin. We could waste a whole afternoon this way. Sometimes I sit very alone, rub my arm in pain, worried I'll die, worried I won't, translucent in the light. It's hard not to press a blister, thumb and pus, sand and snow, but no one wants an open wound. Baby oil and iodine, that little Playboy bunny sticker girls used to stick above their bikini line, the pail beneath. Waves breaking, a bucket full of still sandy seashells, the fishes too, and God, and you. I can't admit how many times I've abandoned those I love to walk along the shore, willfully burning my shoulders, feeling the ache of my legs, walking so far and for so long that I might reach the edge of the world, and then turning back, the walk always so much farther, wading into the ocean only deep enough to splash water onto my face, stare up into the sun, and walking again, finally arriving, sand on the blanket, my novel face down, no one realizing how far I'd gone. To get to the other side. Do you ever feel like an alien? I ask Cliff. He's arranging my body on the radiation table. Usually I apologize for my muddy boots, but today I am feeling more and more like my childhood alien abduction dreams were actually dreams about middle-aged cancer treatment. Like you've taken me from a field of poppies, I say, and are performing bizarre intergalactic experiments on me. Cliff laughs and secures my arm in the vise. He closes the 12-inch steel door behind him. Once I'm inside the radiation tube, I'm not supposed to think about Marie Curie's cataracts or her fingernails falling off, or the fact that her casket is made of lead. So instead, I repeat over and over, healing radiant light, healing radiant light. And when I get bored of repeating healing radiant light, I make up jokes instead. Horse walks into a bar with a camel hanging from his mouth. Bartender says, "Need a healing radiant light?" Cliff is on the other side of the glass. His voice booms through the speaker. "You ready?" he asks. I give a thumbs up. Why did the woman cross the road? To get to the healing radiant light. Cliff tells me to breathe in, deeper, deeper, that's it, he says, and hold. At least I get to be the human, I'll tell him, if he ever comes back. Healing radiant light, knock, knock. Healing radiant light, who's there? Healing and release, he says. I open my eyes to see the pine trees they've painted on the ceiling to trick my mind into thinking I'm lying in a field on the earth, staring up through the green and into the spacious blue sky. The eye of the machine scans me, beeps, holds, and again Cliff says, "How many women does it take to screw in a healing radiant light bulb?" One. Blood work. The phlebotomist tells me I've got to lean into the tide. I turn my head so as not to see the needle go in, a habit. Which tide to lean into? It's the next August, what I would have called a year from now, a year ago. If a year ago was a year from now, then I'd like to be in the pool with Ella, holding her body to help her float, watching her bat her eyes at the sun, the sky as blue as this tourniquet. Has it passed? Am I through? I could spend a decade writing odes to the sound of the air conditioner. The last time I was in this waiting room, a man in the chair beside me sketched birds. I'd hoped to see him today. Or not him, but the birds, or not the birds, but the space around the birds, sky as a collection of molecules above water around bird. What did the drowning woman say to the fish? Kelp me, get it? What's gotten, what's had, forgotten, forehad. Of my to-dos, I too did. Of the tide, my intertidal intervals vary, but really, this tourniquet is just so blue. Desquamation. The room downstairs was in need of a good cleaning, but it was my room. Or perhaps because it was my room, it was in need of a good cleaning. Not that I had dragged in dirt from the garden. but that I was shedding the outermost membrane of my skin. In 2011, the same year I lost one pregnancy and found my last, Charles Wexler and his colleagues explained that humans shed their entire outer layer of skin every 2 to 4 weeks. This seems counter to the 7 years I learned in grade school, when my favorite joke was, "Your epidermis is showing." But yes, since I began these sentences, I've likely shed 0.009 ounces of skin, which doesn't sound like a lot, but line by line, it adds up. And so by the time my husband visits my downstairs room, he might drag his finger across the dust of my desk and ask how I can live this way. I am living, yes, and this way. The scientific term is desquamation, from the Latin desquamare, meaning to scrape the scales off a fish. Each summer comes a morning when walking to the river, I discover a number of dead fish have washed up onto the bank, and I'm startled, a hook in my heart. And each summer on that morning, I promise myself I will not be startled again. I will not be startled again. Oh, dust, I am not the same woman who began this story. This strange garment. Morning, absent of sound, but for the winter wren, the space heater, millstone, fontanelle, skein of geese, threat of rain, how to sustain. Jean said that on the anniversary of her death, we should sit in lamplight, sing to a bowl of lemons, praise the resonant sack. O bladder and follicle, hymen and tree, the underside of me, so purplely bruised, to what do I owe the honor of one more cold day, the warm script, the grit and gloss of being? Mother writes to say she still can't taste the curdled cream. I dreamed it was afternoon. The spirit pined for an avenue of bodies, an evening rush. What comes after the after? A blouse on a doorknob, the hush. Thank you.
Wow, that was terrific. I'm so happy to have been introduced to your work. And thank you for reading today. Our last feature for today is John Brantingham, who left Southern California for the wilds of upstate New York. And now he's returning to us, if only virtually. John Brantingham was the Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park first poet laureate. His work has been featured in hundreds of magazines, Writer's Almanac, Best Small Fictions 2016 and 22. He has 19 books of poetry. I don't think I knew that, and fiction, including Life, Orange to Pear from Bamboo Dark Press. He's the founder and general editor of the Journal of Radical Wonder, so you should definitely send him your poems and whatever else you have. He lives in Jamestown, New York. John?
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you for having me today. And I'm so thrilled and honored to be reading with Nicole and Sonia. And I look around the room and so many writers that I really love, whose books that I've reviewed. And I'll only review a book if I really, really admire it, and I'm just overwhelmed by it. So it's wonderful to see you all here today. And so what my sort of life mission is to live in a state of radical wonder, as the magazine suggests. And so that's why I left Southern California and moved to Western New York. It's why I was in Sequoia. And so this book I'm going to be reading from is sort of crossing the High Sierra. It's about getting that space, using nature to do it. I don't think that's you have to go into nature to do it, but that's the way that I did it. And so I went with my wife Anne for 9 years. We lived all summer long there, and this is from that experience. The first one is called Agenda. Agenda. Darling, this summer, let's walk down the spine of the Sierra Nevada mountains, tightrope them on the John Muir Trail, despite the fact that the doctors 30 years ago said you would be in a wheelchair today. I want to hike with you up through Evolution Valley, which everyone says is the most beautiful place on earth, so we can watch the golden eagles laze clockwise 100 feet above turkey vultures doing their counterclockwise dance. And I don't care what it takes, even if it means I have to carry your gear. And later, I want to watch you paint your paintings and change the way the world sees a flower, even though when we talk about art, so many people raise their eyebrows and look away. And I don't care if they're laughing either. I want to go with you to that spot on Big Sur where all those people would never go anyway, and stare at you while you sketch until I can tell you're uncomfortable. And then I'll pretend not to stare, but we'll both know. Let's listen to jazz music no one else likes and go to movies everyone else calls pretentious. I want to go back to London with you and take us both to Kyoto for the first time. I want to learn the language of the tongue of a people and go back to college when we're 60 to become the archaeologists Indiana Jones dreamed us into. This spring, I want to sit on a train with you in the Mojave Desert and sip dirty martinis, watching for coyotes to poke their heads up out of the scrub and smile at us. They get us. They understand us. And even if they don't, I want to listen to them with you as they sing the stars awake. And so I got way into jazz during this period because I don't know, I just like jazz. And I don't know if you've listened to Jobim, and you know, there's a couple of really just phenomenal albums that I'll just play over and over in my head. This is Jobim's Sacred Wave. I'm up here above 9,000 feet, just me with my memories of Antonio Carlos Jobim, who tells me to look left above the trail, up there 100 feet or so, where the red spots blotch the boulders, red moments that could be the saffron robes of lichen, or they might be petroglyphs, dozens of them dotting the rock here and there. I asked Jobim why lichen would grow in splotches. Wouldn't it blanket the rock? Could that be anything but pictures of people dancing ancient sambas? And I asked Jobim, could it be that I am standing here in a sacred place, an outdoor cathedral of memory? Jobim points out that this is the mountain range that rose 18 feet in 2 minutes in 1906, that this is the spot at the edge of the continent which keeps surging and surging, churning rock out of the ground. The pure waters of the Sierra Nevada and the constant winds blowing across it turn rock into gravel, and that gravel mixes with the detritus of trees and the bodies of animals until they blend into the mud that finds itself on the valley floor, growing into corn and wheat and beets. And yes, he says, it's a sacred kind of wave, a music that pulses this earth's body. And yes, this is a divine space, and it's made holy by petroglyphs and lichen. And me and my sliver of moment, and that seeing all of this happening right now, this is my prayer. And that the High Sierra is hundreds of miles of sacrosanct, all of it purified, all of it sanctified, all of it pushing forward in the slow motion bossa nova of geologic time. This is a sonnet, a half an hour on Silliman Pass. And Silliman Pass is a very high pass. It's up with the Pika. So you get up there and there's no trees or anything. You just see the entire forest below you. The whole world is below you. Half an hour on Silliman Pass. Below us, forests and lakes spread deep like the unconscious of a teenager who doesn't yet understand his secret angers or the terrors, frustrations, and lusts that sleep inside him. I can see things moving on riverbanks or flitting into bushes, and the trees pulse with the implications of what we can't know beneath them, creatures forever hiding from us. And he points to a hawk circling down below us. It's 100 feet above a meadow, and we watch it hunt until it plunges into our unknown. We talk about how life is a mystery, how most of what happens is just out of sight. Okay. Another, I got heavily into sonnets while I was up there, and this one was inspired by wild geese. Who's that poet who did wild geese? Mary Oliver. Yeah. So this is called End Song. The only secret you need to know to walk above the high Sierra tree line is slow silence. Look down on the pine trees, breathe, and allow yourself to go the speed your body wants. Listen to pika calling to each other, the final songs of animals dying of heat. They will be gone in the next summer, or perhaps they may last a few years. But take the time anyway to listen to their voices as you refill your bodies with air, as you stare out across 100 miles of mountains in the dropping day at a moment that might be the end of all and everything. Listen to the song of loss. I actually should have prefaced that. Pikas are the first animal that we know is going to go extinct because of climate change. And they can't be warmer than 70 degrees for 2 hours straight. And they keep going higher and higher in the mountains, and the heat's following them up. So, yeah. Okay. Do I have time for one more, Robbie? Or have I gone over?
It's okay, go ahead.
Okay. With Coltrane on the Great Western Divide. Coltrane starts playing in my head as I come across over the falls, coming off Precipice Lake. Up here, too high, even for frogs, and no trees and nothing that moves that I can see, except for the little saffron spiral bugs who live in this water that fades from clear to blue to green. And Coltrane's blowing in my head as the winds are blowing in my ears, and I can barely breathe up here. My early morning trot up this mountain is down to a plod, and I climb out of the bowl of lake and up the other side to this place called Kaweah Gap, this low spot on the Great Western Divide. And look on one side of the Paternoster Lake I've just climbed out of, and on the other side down at the broad arroyo, down at those little rings of foxtail pines here and there scattered on a world of brown grass until they reach into the lodgepole forest, somewhere a mile below me. And then I realize what's been playing through my head all this morning, and Coltrane's there singing to me alone, because I'm the only one in this wide world except for those little Buddhist monks, monk bugs, dancing to his sax in the water. And he's singing that part of the song, a love supreme, a love supreme, a love supreme, over and over. And he's right. And I know just exactly what he means. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you to everyone, all the features and all the open mic readers. It's wonderful to have you. And I hope that you'll return again when we meet next month, if the world doesn't end in the interim. And you never know these days. So I'm going to turn off the recording, and then you can chat with each other if you want to. It would be nice if it would stop there.